Chapter 101, Mu Family Visiting 4. The guest bedroom was elegant and immaculate, the scent of sandalwood filling the room. The girl put away the silver needles in front of her and looked up at the two people awaiting her. The treatment is already done, you can go ask them how the effects are. As soon as he heard those words, Elder Rong's heart swelled with joy and he hurriedly rushed towards the middle-aged man who was sitting upright. Darren, how do you feel? After asking this, he involuntarily froze. He witnessed the tips of the man's originally pale hair gradually turning black. Even though the change was very slight, it still made Elder Rong extremely emotional, and his entire body started to tremble slightly. He believed that there would inevitably be a day that Darren would return to normal. Grandfather. Ning Xin walked to Elder Ning and lent her arm to lift him while asking with concern, "Are you feeling better?" Elder Ning nodded with a faint smile. His gaze turned to young Luo Feng, his smile widening. "Yetu, as soon as you inserted the needle, it truly made my entire body and mind very relaxed. I really don't know how to thank you." If it were not for young Luo Feng, he was afraid he could only wait for death at the Ning residence. "I have a prescription here, go back to gather the medicinal herbs and brew it. Take a dose daily and come back for a session of acupuncture every 3 days until your body has fully recovered." Young Luo Feng's sight landed on the pale-faced, middle-aged man and continued to say, "As a matter of fact, I can get rid of the manluo flower poison entirely, but this way, his body would undoubtedly be unable to withstand it, so I can only purge the poison from his body bit by bit." "I understand, I completely understand." Elder Rong nodded his head, so excited that he became somewhat incoherent. "Uniato, I am really grateful to you. You're our medical pavilion's savior. If you need anything in the future, just come to the medical pavilion to let me know, and I will certainly make every effort to help." Young Luo Feng crookedly smiled, a wicked light flashed through her dark eyes. In fact, the reason she saved this middle-aged man was for the red hackberry tree, and the second reason was to make the medical pavilion owe her a favor. In the future, if she became embroiled in a dispute with the imperial clan, perhaps the medical pavilion's people could help her once. This life-saving thing really makes people tired out easily. Young Luo Feng languidly stretched and turned around to push the room's door open and said to the several people behind her, "You can do as you wish." The moment that she stepped out of the room, a sharp-eyed guard of Yun family caught a glimpse of her and quickly approached her, cupping his fists in salute. "Eldest Miss, Prime Minister Mu Estate's eldest son came to announce noble consort's decree, so Master made this subordinate wait here for Eldest Miss." Prime Minister Mu Estate, noble consort Niang. When Elder Rong, who was closely following behind, heard this, he was stunned for a brief second before sneering. "This Prime Minister Mu Estate really won't leave you alone." He turned to the middle-aged man behind him, his geriatric face displaying respect. "Darren, this Prime Minister Mu Estate continually made things difficult for Uniato. Now that Uniato is very important to us, can I go protect her?" Those predators from the Prime Minister estate definitely did not come here with good intentions, so how could he be at ease about young Luo Feng facing those people? What if she was devoured to the point that none of her bones remained intact, then where would he go find another godly doctor? "Very well," the middle-aged man lightly nodded. His voice was extremely faint, but it was much better than being unable to speak like before. "Ho ho," Elder Ning faintly laughed twice. "Let's go, this old crock also wants to know why those people came to find Uniato." Chapter 102, Kneeling to Receive a Decree 1. Inside the silent main hall, Mu Wuchen's appearance was cold and solemn. His features emitted an icy air, frightening all the servants behind him to the point of not daring to take a deep breath. "General Yun," Mu Wuchen finally could not resist and turned to Yun Luo with his frosty face, his tone clearly layered with rage. "I have already been waiting here for several Shichen, could you perhaps go hurry her for us?" They have been waiting here since noon and it was already sunset now, but young Luo Feng still had not appeared. This inevitably made Mu Wuchen suspect if the old guy was doing this on purpose. The elderly man tasted the tea in his hands with satisfaction, raised an eyebrow to look at Mu Wuchen, who was gradually becoming impatient from waiting, and leisurely stated, "My granddaughter is not carefree like you. If you want to see her, then you can only wait." Mu Wuchen's face turned several degrees colder, unable to resist the urge to stand up. At this exact moment, he caught a glimpse of the peerlessly beautiful girl outside the house walking over leisurely. He forcibly repressed the fury that was already bursting forth once again. "Grandfather." Young Luo Feng did not even glance at Mu Wuchen, unhurriedly heading towards the elderly man sitting beside the tea table with light steps. Her posture was sluggish and carefree while her gorgeous face carried a faint smile. You were looking for me. The elderly man swept his eye across Mu Wuchen, whose expression was slowly darkening, and said with a chilly smile, "It wasn't me looking for you, it was Mu family's people making a fuss about a casual remark dropped by their superior and seeking trouble for you." Young Luo Feng raised her brows slightly, her dark eyes turning to the cold Mu Wuchen, the smile on her lips revealed a trace of mischief. Seeking trouble for me? That depends whether these people have that capability. Who in the current Longyuan doesn't know that I, young Luo Feng, possess a dandy nature? Relying on General Estate's power to throw my weight around. So coming to General Estate to seek trouble for me, I'm afraid they found the wrong place. I can just have people throw them out. Cough cough. Elder Rong, who was following closely behind her, heard those words and nearly choked on his own saliva. He managed not to laugh out loud by forcibly holding back. Dandy nature, throwing her weight around. This was the first time that the old guy heard someone use these words to describe themselves. This girl truly could not be judged by typical logic. Mu Wuchen coldly harumphed once. Young Luo Feng, I came here to convey noble consort's imperial decree. Why aren't you on your knees yet to receive it? After saying this, Mu Wuchen haughtily lifted his chin, waiting for this arrogant young lady to kneel in front of him. But after waiting for a long while, there were still no movements. Mu Wuchen tightly knitted his brows and looked at young Luo Feng with impatience, his eyes revealing his dissatisfaction. Young Luo Feng, I'm telling you to kneel, could it be you didn't hear me? Currently, young Luo Feng's arms were folded across her chest, and she was staring at him with a faint smile. Then, her originally bewitching expression suddenly revealed a domineering air, her features were arrogant as she exclaimed solemnly, Mu Wuchen, committing the crime of insulting the sovereign, according to the laws of Longyuan, how should you be punished? Mu Wuchen blanked out and stared at young Luo Feng with incomprehension, not understanding when he committed the crime of insulting the sovereign. A long while later, he regained his senses, and his expression turned even colder. Young Luo Feng, don't bother trying to frame me. When did I insult the sovereign? Tell me the reason if you have the nerve. Hearing these words, young Luo Feng's brows lifted slightly, her arrogant and unruly dark eyes settling on Mu Wuchen's livid expression once again. Chapter 103. Kneeling to receive a decree 2. Mu Wuchen, His Majesty personally handed me a special decree, which makes me similar to royal relatives and not need to kneel no matter what. Even if noble consort Niangyang came here in person, I still don't need to kneel to her, let alone to a mere imperial decree. Since you're now forcing me to kneel, isn't that the crime of insulting the sovereign? Mu Wuchen's chest heaved up and down with anger, but it was unable to be vented out. He could only tightly clench his fists, forcibly calming himself down. Young Luo Feng, he took a deep breath, and his cold, proud gaze flashed with ruthlessness as he frostily said, Noble consort Niangyang's imperial decree orders you to quickly enter the palace and become the princess's study companion for 3 years. You should pack your belongings and leave with me now. Additionally, noble consort Niangyang commands that you are not allowed to leave the palace as you please during the entire time you're to be a study companion. So you need to adequately pack, and as for maidservants. He paused for a moment before continuing, there are imperial maids inside the palace, so you don't need to bring any. These words were like a trigger, completely angering Elder Rong, who remained silent since he entered the door. His geriatric countenance was brimming with rage, and his eyes flared with mounting rage as they turned to look at Mu Wuchen. He berated, who does that princess think she is? Why should Uniato have to be a maidservant for her? Does she really believe herself to be that delicate? Is she worthy of it? Study companions, to put it nicely, were to accompany the princess in cultivating and studying. In reality, they were maidservants who attended to her. With young Luo Feng's identity as godly doctor, even he did not dare to command her, but the result was that these imperial children thought too highly of themselves. Were they actually making a godly doctor become a little maidservant who will serve under someone? Was she worthy of it? More importantly, these people even wanted to lock her inside the imperial palace for 3 years. How could that be? After 3 years had passed, his Darren would already be dead. At that time, even 10 of that dog emperor's lives wouldn't be enough as compensation. Elder Ning's expression also turned colder. In his eyes, young Luo Feng was a godly doctor deserving of his respect. This type of godly doctor actually needed to serve under an imperial princess. If he really allowed her to go, then he should not stay on this continent anymore. The one I am seeking is someone of the general estate, it doesn't have anything to do with you. Mu Wuchen glanced at the furious elder Rong and coldly stated, moreover, the princess has a priceless constitution, having the granddaughter of a general serve her is not a humiliation for her at all. Now that the old general is already old and doesn't have many more years to live, she will have nowhere to go after old general passes away. Our noble consort Niangyang is taking pity on her, so she's giving her a direction. Within Long Yuan, there were not many people who have seen Elder Rong. If it weren't for Jing Lin causing trouble last time, the number of people who were able to see him could completely be counted on one hand. What was unfortunate was that when Jing Lin stirred up trouble, Mu Wuchen was not inside the medical pavilion. As a result, he naturally did not imagine that the elder in front of him was someone that anyone from the imperial clan would curry favor with. Girl, Elder Ning did not have his emotions written all over his face like Elder Rong. He indifferently turned his head to look at young Luo Feng and calmly said, this matter will be decided by yourself. If you don't want to head to the imperial palace to be that what's-her-face princess's study companion, I will unconditionally support you. These coming days, I will make this granddaughter of mine settle in your estate. With her here, no one can force you. Although young Luo Feng was oblivious to Elder Ning's identity, his actions undoubtedly warmed her heart. She smiled at the two old men behind her. Don't worry, no one can force me to do anything that I don't want to do. Her words were arrogant, domineering, obstinate, and unruly, seemingly looking down on Mu Wuchen in front of her. Chapter 104. The Two Shocked Elders 1. Following young Luo Feng's words, the main hall abruptly quieted down. Mu Wuchen clenched his fists and suddenly stood up, his cold, arrogant gaze landing on young Luo Feng's bewitchingly beautiful appearance. His face was cold like frost, chilling people to the bone. Young Luo Feng, don't be ungrateful. What kind of honor is it to become the princess's study companion? It's a good fortune that daughters of Longyuan Kingdom's ministers won't be able to obtain even if they wanted to. Noble consort Niangyang is helping you out of goodwill, yet you are this impertinent. I only have one thing to tell you. Noble consort Niangyang's imperial decree doesn't allow for disobedience. You must enter the palace to be the princess's study companion. His words were incredibly unyielding, with the tone he would seize her if she refused. Since you think being the maidservant of the princess is an honor, then why don't you let your Mu family's Mu Wuchuang be this companion? How about it? Young Luo Feng lazily yawned, her bewitching eyes containing a hint of a smile. She watched Mu Wuchen's increasingly livid expression with a smirk. How dare you? Mu Wuchen coldly shouted, a harsh light flashing through his eyes. Young Luo Feng, what kind of status does Wuchuang have? She has magnificent talents and is endowed with both wit and beauty. She is also the future wife of the crown prince. I don't know how a trash like you has the courage to compare with her. That's right, being the princess's study companion is an honor for the minister's daughters, but Wuchuang isn't one of those people. Mu Wuchen still had a sentence that he did not speak out loud. Wuchuang was incredibly outstanding. How could a mere princess deserve to have Wuchuang as her study companion? His Wuchuang was the future empress, her status was way above that of a princess. As for young Luo Feng, she was a trash, giving her this opportunity to be the princess's study companion, yet she did not appreciate it at all. Was there someone actually this stupid in the world? Of course, the plan of Mu Wuchuang and Mu Xingqiu was not disclosed to Mu Wuchen. With Mu Wuchen's arrogance, he would surely sneer at their scheme. So he still could not figure out why would his own aunt let a trash be the princess's study companion. Weren't they afraid that she would neglect the princess? Young Luo Feng glanced at Mu Wuchen's icy face from the corner of her eyes, smirking, will you get lost on your own, or would you rather make me throw you out? Young Luo Feng, Mu Wuchen furiously clenched his fists, his veins popping out of his forehead, you will really disobey noble concubine's imperial decree. Young Luo Feng raised her eyebrows. If I didn't guess wrong, she decided the matter about me being the princess's study companion on her own, and the emperor is in the dark. Why don't you enter the palace and ask the emperor whether the child of a meritorious minister only deserves to be the study companion of a princess? I'm not sure if he would have the nerve to force me to enter the palace. Based on the dog emperor's act of sending Yi Ling to stab the general estate in the back, young Luo Feng could see that the current emperor would not shed all pretense of cordiality with the general estate yet. Moreover, the Dog Emperor still planned to take advantage of Yi Ling to set her up. How could it be possible that he would have her enter the palace during this time? In this respect, she could tell that this was definitely noble consort Mu acting on her own, and the Dog Emperor was unmistakably unaware. All right. Mu Wuchen's eyes darkened, and he coldly snorted before saying, Yun Luo Feng, you missed this opportunity to be promoted, so don't regret it in the end. When the time comes, even if you beg and scream wanting to be the princess's companion, no one would bother with you. Let's go. He flung the sleeves of his robe before sullenly turning around to leave. Mu Wuchen's internal wrath could be perceived from those hurried steps. It turns out all nobles are this conceited, Elder Rong icily said with laughter. Uniato, it looks like you're able to handle today's affair yourself, so this old guy won't meddle in your affair. If you need anything else in the future, just come to the medical pavilion to let me know, and I will definitely do everything in my power to help. Chapter 105, The Two Shocked Elders 2. Elder Ning was not as furious as Elder Rong. He only turned his head to look at Yun Luofeng and calmly stated, Girl, there is something that I need to tell you. Originally, this matter is only known by those who have reached the level similar to mine. Now that you and the imperial family are almost on opposing sides, I must inform you this matter for the sake of your safety. Yun Luofeng raised her eyebrow as she looked at Elder Ning, her smile revealing a touch of sluggishness. Elder Ning, speak as you please. Elder Ning paused for a moment. The strength of your number one expert in Longyuan is at high level, advanced rank, but do you know where this expert came from? Yun Luofeng shook her head. It was true that, with her current status, she did not have the qualifications to know about these matters. That expert came from the power behind the imperial clan. Elder Ning's eyes darkened as he continued to say, every imperial clan possesses a power behind them. However, under normal conditions, as long as the imperial clan does not encounter a disaster where the country is in a precarious situation, that power will not act and will only send an expert to guard the imperial clan. This is the reason why those forces did not act even though these several countries continued to war with each other for these many years. This is due to the prior agreement between these several forces. Yun Luofeng grew silent. A long while later, she lifted up her pitch-black eyes and looked straight at Elder Ning. If we go by what you say, a dynasty will definitely last forever. However, over the past thousands and hundreds of years, it's not like a change of dynasties hadn't happened before, yet those of power did not stop it. Elder Ning chuckled twice before patiently explaining, that's correct, there really was the change of imperial dynasties, but in the past thousands of years, this type of thing only happened several times. These few times were none other than the current emperor offending the formidable force behind them, resulting in a change of dynasties. His words implied that these several instances of dynasty replacement were all due to the emperor offending the power behind them, so that power sent someone to seize the reign and the throne. Yun Luofeng did not imagine that there would be a formidable power behind the imperial clan. Since it was like this, she had to act even more carefully. Girl, you don't have to be too worried. As long as the imperial clan isn't destroyed, those forces will not casually appear. Even if you accidentally provoke those forces, my Ning family will not allow them to touch you in the slightest, said Elder Ning in a careless manner with an indifferent smile. Grandfather, Ning Xin looked at her grandfather's aloof face and said with a slight smile, I feel like I share a kindred spirit with Xiao Feng, so I want to stay longer at the Yun residence. Xiao Feng, I don't know if you will welcome me staying. She turned her head to look at Yun Luofeng and blinked her eyes, her pretty and dignified face displaying a warm and gentle smile. 2 days ago, this Ning Xin was still calling Yun Luofeng Miss Yun, but now she was addressing her as Xiao Feng, in a natural, familiar way. The meaning that she wanted to convey was very apparent. No matter what happened, the Ning family would absolutely stand on her side. Sure, Yun Luofeng bewitchingly smiled with eyes full of happiness. You can stay at my Yun home for as long as you want. From the beginning, Yun Luofeng had favorable feelings towards the Ning family's grandfather and granddaughter pair. Now that it was this obvious that the other party was picking sides, if she still did not accept, then it would be a bit ungrateful. Haha. Elder Ning heartily chuckled twice before turning to General Yun Luo. His geriatric face was radiant, beaming with joy. General Yun Luo, I am quite envious of you. Having such an outstanding granddaughter truly makes people jealous. Chapter 106, The Two Shocked Elders 3. Old man Yun was already used to being flexible and taking advantage of situations since long ago. As soon as he heard Elder Ning's words, he immediately glared at young Luo Feng. Girl, what are you still distracted about? Didn't you hear that Elder Ning wants to take you as his granddaughter? Why aren't you calling him Grandfather Ning already? Even before, the old man could tell Elder Ning's identity was not simple. If young Luo Feng had someone like this protecting her, even when he passed away, he would no longer have to worry about her being alone and impoverished without anyone to protect her. Upon hearing these words, Elder Ning instantly became stupefied, and young Luo Feng was also startled. Two pairs of eyes simultaneously looked towards the old man, causing him to be somewhat embarrassed. Cough, cough, the old man awkwardly coughed twice. Elder Ning, didn't you keep saying you were envious that I had a granddaughter like this? So I thought of this idea to let her become your god-granddaughter. This way, there's no need for you to admire me. Elderly Ning burst out laughing, his aloof eyes contained a smile as they turned towards young Luo Feng. In this regard, I naturally don't have any objections, but I'm not sure how Uniato will choose. Young Luo Feng helplessly shrugged her shoulders. I will listen to my old man. What else could she choose? Her old man had already issued an order, did she dare to disobey? More importantly, young Luo Feng knew that the old man made this decision for the sake of her well-being. He was afraid that there would not be anyone who would wholeheartedly protect her on this continent when the day came for him to leave this world. Thus, he had no scruples about forsaking his old face. I'm truly jealous of you. Elder Rong glanced at Elder Ning with jealousy. Although Uniato's strength isn't that great and had now only reached early level advanced rank, her medical skill is extremely brilliant. Picking up a granddaughter like this, you really profited. Just as Elder Rong's jealousy-filled voice was heard, an exaggerated cry was suddenly heard beside him, startling him. What? The elderly man's eyes widened as he evaluated young Luo Feng with incredulity. After examining this girl's strength, his eyes filled with astonishment. Why, you broke through to early level advanced rank? Elder Ning and Elder Rong looked at each other with confusion. Even in Longyuan, an early level advanced rank spirit cultivator was not a big deal, so why was the old man this shocked? It was as though young Luo Feng reaching early level advanced rank was an extremely unfathomable matter. Elder Rong was silent for a moment before pensively gazing at young Luo Feng. Before, I heard people said that young Luo Feng was a trash that could not cultivate. So why would your cultivation reach early level advanced rank? Young Luo Feng languidly stood with her back against the wall and lightly lifted her brows as she bewitchingly said, I was luckily accepted as a disciple by a strong person. It was him who helped me change my physique, allowing me to be able to cultivate. However, I don't wish for anyone to know about this matter. Elder Ning thought about it and asked, Girl, just when did you improve your physique? Young Luo Feng stroked her chin, her voice was somewhat muffled, it seems like it's been for some time. The corner of Elder Ning's lips slightly twitched. How long is this? It's been for some time. Girl, can't you give me a specific number? Roughly, young Luo Feng thought about it, her tone containing a trace of uncertainty. 1 month. She really appeared to have been cultivating for less than a month. And the her from 1 month ago was still a trash that everyone ridiculed. 1 month. Hiss. Elder Rong could not help but gasp in surprise. It was long before he could wrap his head around this piece of shocking news. While he and Elder Ning looked at each other, both of their eyes contained astonishment. Chapter 107. The Two Shocked Elders 4. In a month, she went from a trash to an early level, advanced rank spirit cultivator. Reaching the goal that other people needed to spend an entire year to reach. A talent like this, how astonishing was it to people? I recall that Mu family's Mu Wuxuang spent more than 2 years to break through to early level advanced rank. But this type of talent was already incessantly praised by those ignorant people of Longyuan. Elder Rong shook his head as he stated with a constrained smile. If Uniato's talent was made known, just where would Mu Wuxuang's face be placed anymore? Girl, you really don't want to get rid of your reputation as trash and ruthlessly make Mu Wuxuang lose face again. Young Luo Feng bewitchingly lifted the corner of her lips, her pitch-black eyes flickering. Elder Rong, you should know our Yun family's current situation. Before I gain enough strength, I can only be a trash. Just by being like this will I not attract the alarm of Imperial Clan. In any case, I am accustomed to being ridiculed. Elder Rong was stunned. Just when he was about to speak, he was interrupted by the young girl's languid voice. I, young Luo Feng, have never liked to rely on the power of others. Regardless of how much enmities there are, I want to rely on my own ability to retaliate. Imperial clan, Mu family, I will make them pay their blood debt with their blood sooner or later. Hence, I won't act in haste. Elder Ning shook his head with a bitter smile while his gaze at young Luo Feng became increasingly approving. Girl, you want to be a trash, but I'm afraid it won't be that easy. The people that you've met thus far aren't that strong. If you met the Imperial clan's expert, they will be able to gauge your strength with a single look, so here's a space ring that can be considered as a gift for acknowledging you as my granddaughter. You must keep it safe. Upon seeing her grandfather taking out a bronze ring, surprise flashed through Ning Xin's beautiful eyes. She did not say anything though and just silently stood beside Elder Ning. Ning clan's token. Seeing this ring's bearer was the same as seeing grandfather himself, and the wearer would be able to mobilize any clansman of Ning clan out there. Furthermore, as long as young Luo Feng carried the token ring, Ning clan's clansmen must unconditionally obey when they see it. Then, thank you, Grandfather Ning. Seeing the anticipation in Elder Ning's eyes, young Luo Feng did not reject his goodwill. Girl, besides storing objects, this ring can also suppress your aura. So, when you travel outside and even if the Imperial clan expert made a move, they won't detect your aura, so you can rest assured. Young Luo Feng's heart jolted. She did not imagine that the space ring that Elder Ning gave her would be this valuable. This favor that she owed was truly enormous. You beat me to it once again this time. Elder Rong glanced at Elder Ning and sourly said, that won't do. I will discuss with Darren what is a good present to gift this girl later. I can't fall behind you on this matter no matter what. Elder Ning chuckled. I am her grandfather, so I ought to give her presents, but I have no idea what identity you are using to give her gifts. These two old men, they wanted to compete with each other about everything. At a time like this, how could Elder Ning not mercilessly mock him? You beat me to adopting her as a granddaughter, but I still have a grandson. Elder Rong humphed and turned his head to look at young Luo Feng. A smile appeared on his geriatric face while his tone carried fawning. Girl, that grandson of mine is a lot stronger than Crown Prince Gao Ling. Whether it is his looks, strength, or temperament, Gao Ling absolutely can't compare with him. So, if you marry my grandson, I will let you take my grandson to flaunt in front of Gao Ling and Mu Wuxuang, angering those two scums to death. Chapter 108. The Two Shocked Elders 5. In order to curry favor with young Luo Feng, Elder Rong even called them scums. It could be imagined what kind of person Gao Ling and Mu Wuxuang were in his eyes. Elder Rong, just how old is this girl? Aren't you ruining him by doing this? Elder Ning glared at Elder Rong and said with a radiant smile, besides, my Ning family's younger generation is pretty good as well. As long as this girl is willing, she can choose her husband from my Ning clan however she wants. The old man at that moment was already completely flabbergasted. These old men actually started discussing his granddaughter's spouse like nobody else was present. Out of the question. This was definitely out of the question. He still wanted to keep this girl for several years, so how could he allow her to get married now? Without waiting for the old man to open his mouth to stop them, the young girl's voice was slowly heard inside the main hall. Her voice was languid and bewitching, but it carried a hint of helplessness. The two of you, I'm only 14 years old right now. You are abducting a minor like this. The two elderly men were startled and suddenly recalled young Luo Feng's presence. Thinking of how they were discussing this matter in front of this girl just now, their face unwittingly turned embarrassed. Cough, cough, Elder Rong dryly coughed and turned to Elder Ning, saying, this girl is right. She is still too young right now, so how can she withstand those punks' torment? Elder Ning, why don't we make a bet and see which family's boy can move this girl's heart? The one who loses will have to attend to the other person's daily life for 3 years. Great. Elder Ning slapped the table coolly and agreed decisively. I will make this bet with you. I am very confident in my boys. Moreover, I will have Exener, this girl, help, so it will definitely be twice the effect with half the effort. Ning Xin helplessly caressed her forehead. She really wanted to say that she did not know this old man. Furthermore, as if him making a bet was not enough, why did he have to drag her into it too? Thinking of this, Ning Xin's gaze involuntarily turned towards young Luo Feng and unexpectedly saw her with her arms folded across her chest and smiling all the while, as though not caring that these two old men were making a bet about her. It's already quite late, girl, so we won't bother you here any longer. Elder Ning did not look at Elder Rong anymore and retrieved his gaze, aloofly smiling. Exener, let's go. We will return to the inn to rest. When people are old, their energy is no good. Yes, grandfather. Ning Xin lent her arm to support Elder Ning to head outside. When she passed by young Luo Feng, she sent her a pretty smile while lightly blinking her eyes, silently laughing before helping Elder Ning leave. Imperial Palace Inner Court, High Buildings Forest Room. At this moment, inside Jinhua Palace, noble consort Mu was lazily lying on the chaise lounge. Several eunuchs and imperial maidservants surrounded her, all in the middle of waiting for her orders. Just then, a eunuch hurriedly dashed through the door and with a flick of the horsetail whisk in his hands, he announced in his sharp voice, reporting to noble consort Niangyang, eldest son Mu is requesting an audience. Oh, noble consort Mu raised an eyebrow, the red dot between her brows were extremely seductive. She slowly sat up from the chaise lounge and indifferently said, "Let him enter." It had already been a while since Mu Wuchen went to the general estate to announce the decree, so he must now be bringing Yun Luofeng, that little slut, here to acknowledge the decree. That little slut plotted to frame Wushwang, so she must pay her back for Wushwang this time. From beginning to end, noble consort Mu did not imagine that Yun Luofeng would disrespectfully defy the imperial decree. After all, this was such a good opportunity placed in front of her, someone intelligent would definitely use this opportunity to climb up. Furthermore, with Yun Luofeng's trashy constitution, if she did not search for another way out, she would be unable to continue to survive when General Yun died. Chapter 109, The Excited Second Uncle 1. Just as noble consort Mu waited complacently for Yun Luofeng's deep gratitude, she saw Mu Wuchen, who went to announce the decree, walking inside by himself. In an instant, her noble and alluringly gorgeous face abruptly darkened, a chilly light flashing through her beautiful eyes. "Where's Yun Luofeng? Why did you come back alone?" Mu Wuchen reported with a forced smile. "Niangyang, Yun Luofeng refused to come here to be the princess's study companion. She even had us go ask His Majesty whether this was how the imperial clan treated the granddaughter of a meritorious minister." "What?" Noble consort Mu's face suddenly turned frosty, her long and jade-like hand heavily landed on top of the chair's handle, and coldly said, "Yun Luofeng, that trash, really said this?" "That's right." Mu Wuchen nodded his head. "Niangyang, Yun Luofeng is just a trash, why would you promote her like this? With her identity, she doesn't deserve to be the princess's companion at all. A person as noble as the princess, what right did Yun Luofeng have to be her study companion? Especially since this trash was this ungrateful and actually rejected Niangyang's good intention." Noble consort Mu's eyes darkened and lightly played with the jade ring on her knuckle. It was unknown what she was thinking. At this time, a sharp voice was heard from outside, interrupting noble consort Mu's train of thought. "His Majesty has arrived." Hearing this, noble consort Mu stood up and hurriedly composed her appearance. She looked towards the bright yellow figure, who quickly entered the bedchamber, and bowed in a dignified and graceful manner while greeting, "This servant respectfully welcomes your Majesty." "My dear concubine," Gao Tu glanced at noble consort Mu, who had a smile in her eyes, and said coolly, "I heard that you went to the general estate and made Yun Luofeng come here to be the princess's study companion." Noble consort Mu raised her head, flabbergasted. "Your Majesty, how did you know? This matter is known all over the entire imperial city." Gao Tu coldly chuckled. "Everyone is saying that you, noble consort Mu, is bullying the lone daughter of the general estate and even wants to force her to enter the palace to be the princess's study companion. My dear concubine, in the past, your Mu clan caused the death of Yun Luo's son and daughter-in-law. Jen did not hesitate to side with the Mu clan while disregarding everyone's talk. However, Yun Luofeng is currently the only child of the general estate. If anything happens to her, that old man will definitely fight to the death with the imperial clan. Right now, the imperial clan is temporarily unable to take action against that old man, and thus, Jen hopes you won't act blindly without thinking." Noble consort Mu lowered her eyes and softly replied, "This servant will obey your order." "My dear concubine." Gao Tu's expression turned gentler as he regarded this woman that he extremely doted on, his eyes no longer having its previous severity. "I know you have resentment towards Yun Luofeng. If it weren't for her, Mu Wushwang would not suffer from this kind of grievance. However, Crown Prince is now seriously ill, and Jen is already busy and utterly exhausted from overwork. I don't have time to take notice of these mundane matters. Rest assured that Jen will eventually set my sight on the general estate. I will give you your justice." "Justice?" If young Luo Feng was here and heard this word coming from Gao Tu's mouth, she definitely would not be able to resist laughing out loud. She could not understand how an emperor as lecherous and biased as Gao Tu had the face to speak the word, justice. Your Majesty, with your words, this servant is now relieved. Noble consort Mu lightly lifted the corner of her lips, her elegant face displaying a faint smile. Her misty eyes contained affection and tenderness as she fixed her eyes on the tall and handsome man in front of her. Any man would be unable to resist a woman like her who was as tender and soft as water. Hence, Gao Tu completely flung official matters to the back of his mind and picked noble consort Mu up, walking towards the bed. Mu Wuchen tactfully withdrew and slowly closed the bedchamber's door on his way out. Chapter 110. The Excited Second Uncle 2. Yun Residence Rear Mountain. A man sat in a wheelchair, his whole body was bathed in sunlight, and his cyan robe was shrouded with a faint light. A book was placed on his legs, his entire focus was on this book, so he did not even feel young Luo Feng appearing beside him. Second uncle. A familiar and gentle voice was suddenly heard from the side, finally making the man turn his head. After seeing the young lady beside him, his refined and handsome face involuntarily displayed a smile. His smile was very beautiful and easily stirred young Luo Feng's heart. The grief between his brows was incredibly strong as well, mercilessly gripping her heart. Young Luo Feng looked at this beautiful man that made people's heart ache and said, "Second uncle, I have nursed your body back to health for some time. I can now start the final treatment, and soon you will be able to stand on your legs." Yun Qingya's fingers, which were flipping the book's pages, abruptly froze. He raised his handsome face and asked with some disbelief, "Xiao Fenger, did you just say that I would be able to stand up again?" Young Luo Feng met the man's astonished eyes, solemnly nodding. "In fact, I have long been able to get you to stand up again, however, if I didn't nurture you back to health for some time prior to this, even if you stood up, your legs wouldn't be as agile as before. So I had to wait until today before planning to truly treat you." Yun Qingya's breathing stopped. To be honest, the previous him simply could not imagine that there would come a day that he would be able to stand up again. Even though young Luo Feng previously promised it, he still did not dare to believe it. He was afraid that after believing, he would receive despair instead. Now facing young Luo Feng's confidence-filled eyes once more, he suddenly became bewildered. Perhaps this little niece of his could really cure him. "Second uncle, it won't be long before you can stand up again, and you would no longer need to rely on a wheelchair to walk." Young Luo Feng lightly chuckled out loud. She had waited for this day for a long time. "Little Fenger." Yun Qingya collected his wits, and a gentle like wind smile appeared on his fair-skinned face. A pair of handsome eyes stared intently at the young lady standing beside him as he softly said, "Second uncle can let you try. Even if you fail, you don't need to be discouraged. Second uncle is already very content that you have this intention." His words were not just spoken for young Luo Feng's sake, but it was also intended to warn himself inside his mind. If his treatment failed, he could not show any of his disappointment, otherwise, the one who would get hurt would be young Luo Feng. "Second uncle, I am 100% sure I can cure you." Young Luo Feng blinked her eyes at Yun Qingya, and her dark eyes filled with confidence. "Lift your clothes now, so I can perform acupuncture on you." "All right." Yun Qingya faintly smiled and lifted his clothes without any hesitation, revealing his pair of dark purple legs. The two legs were covered in black and purple, obvious that they were harshly pinched by someone. And after seeing this scene, young Luo Feng looked up and her astonished gaze landed on the man's refined face. The man's tone was aloof, as though he was recounting a trifling matter. "These past 10 years, I've felt no sensations from my two legs. Sometimes, I would be unwilling to accept it and would pinch them. I have also gone as far as using a hammer to hit them or broken fragments of porcelain bowls to slash them. No matter how much strength I use though, they still couldn't feel the slightest bit of pain. Later, the maidservant who served me discovered my self-mutilation and took away the hammer, and the porcelain bowls also became wooden bowls.